It's natural for a biological parent to lean toward what their kids want. Kate wants her kids to experience the stability of continuing the spring break tradition.
Sure, and Bill wants his kids to experience the thrill of water skiing and boating. That was something that he really loved as a kid. And there's nothing wrong with wanting good things for your kids or wanting things to go their way. But when a parent-child allegiance becomes permanent, the blended family is going to keep struggling every time a decision has to be made, big or small. Why? Because the couple isn't leading their family from a place of unity. Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting and yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Well, hey there. As always, welcome. We are so delighted to have you joining us today. And as always, we would like to invite you to share this podcast with other people. And you can do that in a few ways. Really simply, you can just rate us as a star rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Another option is to leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts. We would so love to hear how this podcast is impacting you. Or maybe you'll share an episode out to your social media, or maybe simply text an episode to a friend.
Yeah.
We know that there are literally millions of people out there living in blended family dynamics. That means they're in your neighborhoods, they're in your workplace, they're even in your own extended family, and we know they need support. So would you help us reach them? We would so appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us on this mission. And what do you say we get started, hon?
As this episode airs, we're more than halfway through winter and spring is hopefully right around the corner.
Oh, I know you can't wait for that.
Woohoo. And it was about this time of year when one newly blended couple, Bill and Kate, began realizing spring break is coming up and they actually have all their kids with them this year. So they've been thinking about planning something. Wouldn't it be fun to enjoy a getaway? Something adventurous that creates connection and special memories as a family. Sounds amazing, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Until the topic of spring break gets brought up around the dinner table. And what started as a simple, lovely idea suddenly turns into an opinion-filled, stress-inducing conversation. We've all been there, right? See, Bill's been talking with his kids for a while about teaching them to water ski. Like a cabin at the lake sounds like the perfect spring break getaway. And Bill's kids are kind of getting pumped about that thought. They're imagining wakeboarding and skiing and just flying across the water in a speedboat.
But Kate isn't convinced that that's what's best for everyone. During her single-parent years, she and her kids had a spring break tradition they all really cherish, heading to the shore and staying in a relaxing beach cabana. And it becomes pretty obvious that her kids have been looking forward to that all year, soaking up the sun, eating yummy seafood, and combing the beach for treasures.
And as the tension rises around the table, they just kind of quickly change the subject to something safer. But guess what? The spring break dilemma certainly isn't over. And now unspoken stories start to form. Bill's story might sound like this. Kate and her kids have done that same old beach trip forever. We need to shake things up and do something different this year. Aren't we supposed to be creating new traditions as a blended family instead of staying stuck in the past? Besides, my kids don't care about seafood. We can get that anywhere. And sitting on the beach, it's going to bore them to death. They'll be disappointed if we don't go to the lake. They might even try to opt out and stay home with their mom. And then I'd end up missing my time with them.
And Kate has her own story forming. My kids need consistency right now. They've already been through so many changes with this blended family thing, and honoring a tradition they love will help them feel secure. Bill and his kids don't even have a spring break tradition. Shouldn't they be willing to join in on something that's meaningful to us? We can go to the lake anytime. My kids will be crushed if we don't continue our tradition. It's what they're used to. We've made so many good memories at the beach, and if I drag them to the lake, they'll sulk, have bad attitudes, and be mad at me the whole time. They couldn't care less about learning to water ski.
Yeah, remember, those are unspoken stories that are just brewing inside of each of them. Now later, after the kids go to bed, Bill and Kate circle back to the spring break conversation. They both feel convinced they're right, and they both want to be heard and understood. And from here, the conversation could go a few different directions. Now, Bill and Kate might actually communicate well, calmly sharing preferences and genuinely listening to each other, yet still end up stuck on what to actually do. And if they can't find a path to agreement, the whole thing can start to feel so overwhelming that they default by kind of doing nothing and maybe even end up just staying home for spring break. Fine, we're not going to do anything. And the result? Disappointment all around because they missed an opportunity for quality time together.
Or maybe in an effort to keep the peace, one of them backs down and goes along with the other, even though the story in their head is still alive and well, and now it's growing. Great, my kids are going to be so unhappy, and I'm the one who's going to take the hit. The choice to kind of give in and abdicate might avoid an argument, but it can quietly plant resentment. Even if the family does get away for spring break, there's still tension because one partner feels like they caved, their bio unit lost, and the other side won. And that usually doesn't set the stage for a positive bonding experience.
That's right. Or you know what? The conversation could escalate into full-blown conflict. Each one taking an oppositional stance and digging in. I'm right and you're wrong. As they compete over who wins and who loses, voices tend to rise in those situations, accusations fly, and defensiveness takes over. We've all been there before, right? Mm-hmm. The result can be an ugly standoff that sometimes lasts for days, and that's something the kids will certainly pick up on. And before long, the family starts dividing along biological lines. Even if they still go on spring break together, the relational tension is growing. So instead of building connection as a family, now they're struggling to recover from and repair the disconnection that is pretty palpable.
And regardless of which direction this conversation goes, underneath it all is the trapped teammate tangle. Kate feels torn between providing consistency for her kids, doing what she believes is best for them, and pleasing Bill and his kids as well. She understands Bill's perspective, but agreeing with him can feel like betraying her own kids. And even thinking about disrupting their spring break tradition triggers overwhelming guilt and fear in her.
Yeah, and Bill feels torn too, between following through on something exciting that he and his kids have been dreaming about for a while and honoring what matters to Kate and to her kids. He understands Kate's perspective as well, but he's not convinced that his kids will be on board with the beach tradition. And this thought of the possibility of losing quality time with them if they refuse to go, it kind of floods him with guilt and fear as well.
The trapped teammate experience is real and it's painful. Mm-hmm. Every biological parent will feel it to some degree because the moment that a child enters the room or the conversation, the couple dynamic tends to shift. And that shift can affect everything from what kind of foods we stock in the pantry to where we're going to live and how to spend spring break. Mm-hmm. The trapped teammate tangle has a way of sneaking up on us in unexpected moments, triggering emotions that often catch us completely off guard.
That's right. So let's say that Bill and Kate tried to talk through their spring break dilemma, But when things got tense, they decided to table it and come back to it later. But in the meantime, guess what? The story keeps on moving. They keep living life. So Bill picks his kids up from school, and on the drive home, they're buzzing with some excitement, talking about how they can't wait to learn to water ski and how cool boats are. They start peppering Dad with questions. When did you learn to water ski? Were you really good at it? What was it like? And Bill, he was kind of caught up in the moment, and he's sharing, cherished childhood memories from the lake. And he's, having fun, talking about how much he loves water skiing. And then they pass by the big sporting goods store, and one of the kids spots a sign and blurts out, "Hey, they're having a huge sale. Let's see if they have any deals on ski equipment or something." And all the kids start to pile on. They're excited, and Dad, feeling outnumbered, kind of reluctantly pulls into the parking lot as they all rush into the store. And so, swept up into their enthusiasm, guess what Bill does? He ends up buying a kid-sized water ski that happens to be on sale. And it really is a great deal, right? So the kids are skipping back to the car, holding their new gear like it's spring break already, clearly assuming that this is going to seal the plan. This is what we're doing for spring break. And as they drive home, man, Bill is feeling that familiar tension of being a trapped teammate. It's rising in his chest, thinking to himself, oh man, what is Kate going to think about this?
Meanwhile, Kate and her kids are at home hanging out when one of them pulls up the Beach Cabana website and says, "We need to reserve our usual rooms, the ones with that amazing view." All the kids huddle around the screen, typing in the spring break dates. And to their relief, their favorite rooms are still available. And that's when the urgency hits. "Mom, get the credit card. We've got to book this before someone else takes it. Hurry." Because this kind of spring break planning has been the norm for Kate and her kids over the years, she doesn't hesitate. She grabs her wallet and helps them reserve the rooms. And since their numbers have grown, she goes ahead and books the additional rooms they'll now be needing. But as she clicks confirm, the trapped teammate tension rises inside her too. How is Bill going to respond to this?
Now, what do you think is going to happen next for this couple, right? Sometimes when a situation like this feels kind of loaded, people do whatever they can to delay the hard conversation, including putting off disclosing the spoken or unspoken agreements that they've already made with their kids. So Bill, he might actually hide the new water ski somewhere that he thinks Kate won't see it. He might even tell the kids, "Hey, let's keep this on the down low, okay?"
And Kate might do the same. But postponing a sensitive situation like this usually makes it worse. Because what happens when Kate stumbles across the new purchase tucked away in the corner of the garage? Or when one of Bill's kids lets it slip? How is she going to feel?
And what happens when Bill notices the charge on the credit card for the Beach Cabana reservations, or overhears her kids talking about how relieved they are that their favorite rooms were still available? How's Bill going to feel?
Whether it's hidden or shared right away, the moment that one partner realizes the other has been teaming up with their kids and aligning with their preferences before the couple has made a collaborative decision together, it can feel incredibly unsettling and upsetting. Kate might feel like the spring break tradition she and her kids have built for years is being dismissed, like it doesn't matter to Bill.
Yeah, but Bill feels like his desire to do something different to create new traditions as a blended family is also being dismissed. So now guess what? They both feel unheard, excluded, sidelined from a decision, and that really impacts everybody, not just them as a couple, but their kids as well.
And at the core of these pain points is what we call the stranded stranger experience. When you're on the outside of your partner's biological bubble, and it feels like their kids' opinions and preferences carry more weight than yours. And the truth is, every step parent experiences this to some degree. And when it flares up, it often comes out as anger. Why would you go and buy a water ski right now? You're setting your kids up to expect we're going to the lake for spring break. We won't even need that if we end up going to the beach. And now if we don't do the lake, I end up looking like the bad guy.
Oh, you're one to talk. Why would you make those reservations for the cabana? You knew I didn't really want to do that, and you've just made the decision without me. Now your kids think that's the plan when we haven't even decided what we're doing. We'll have to cancel those reservations if we end up going to the lake. Now, you've probably heard us talk about the trapped teammate and stranded stranger before. It's usually in the context of the challenges that it creates in your couple relationship. But the broader picture isn't just a coupleness problem, it's also a familyness problem. Because when these moments strike, it also creates some confounded kiddos.
That's right. So let's think about that by first stepping into the shoes of Kate's confounded kiddos and what they might be experiencing. If the decision ends up being the lake for spring break, her kids could feel displaced. But we always go to the beach. That's our special thing. And their sense of family identity could take a painful hit. They might even start interpreting this as a threat to their relationship with mom. Well, I guess they're more important now, and mom's going to put their wants and needs above ours. That kind of shift can also stir up loss and grief, because when traditions change, kids often feel like something familiar is being taken away, and they're being forced to adapt to a change they didn't ask for. And if that grief isn't understood or processed, it can come out as resentment towards the steps. Things were so much better before they came along. I hate the lake. Water skiing sucks. And as mom feared, her kids show up sulky with bad attitudes and aren't as warm and cozy towards her as usual.
And what about the confounded kiddos on the other side? If the family decides to go to the beach for spring break, what might Bill's kids experience? Just as Dad fears, they might dig their heels in and threaten to stay home with their mom, or at the very least push back. Why do we have to go to the beach just because that's what they've always done? It feels like we're intruding on their time or their thing or whatever. It's really not what we want to do. See, Bill's kids might feel pressured to go along with it or awkward about the whole situation, which is already complicated just because blending is often an awkward process.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they could feel resistant. And they might also feel disappointed and let down at the same time. Dad said he was going to teach us to water ski. I don't get why we have to go to the stupid beach instead. I hate seafood. I was excited about driving a fast boat around the lake. And underneath that disappointment, resentment can begin to grow toward the steps. Why do they have to get their way? Even when Dad really wants to take us to the lake, this just sucks.
We cannot overlook or underestimate the relational impact of confounded kiddos. And by the way, one definition of the word confounded is very bad or annoying, deserving of condemnation or displeasure. Ooh, I can just hear some of you groaning right now, because whether you're a biological parent or a step parent, you've probably been on the receiving end of a confounded kiddo who, in their emotional discomfort, is voicing complaints, acting out, or maybe shutting down on you.
Yeah. I love a few synonyms for confounded are confused and perplexed. I really like this one, blasted. That's actually a synonym for confused. That blasted step parent. And honestly, I'd venture to say that every child in a blended family experiences some version of these painful realities at some point to one degree or another.
Yeah, growing pains in a blended family. In last week's Simple Step, we explored how step family structure naturally sets us up for some challenging dynamics. As decisions get made, someone will inevitably end up feeling trapped, stranded, or confounded.
Or all three.
Right. Why? Because in a blended family, every decision, big or small, can feel like a statement of loyalty and priority. Who's with me and do I matter?
Yeah. And like we mentioned earlier, this kind of thing happens around bigger things like planning spring break, but also smaller things like what kind of food are we going to stock in the pantry, or what are we going to do on a Sunday afternoon? And there are some really reasonable explanations for why this happens. First, a blended family marriage is fundamentally different than a first family marriage. You're starting out with reordered relationships. There's already a deep established bond between each parent and their biological children. That connection often outweighs the newer marital bond, which is still forming and is naturally kind of weaker, if you will, compared to the long-standing parent-child bond. So it takes careful consideration and intentional effort to reorder what's been reordered and to gradually establish the marriage as the foundation of the home.
And we also come in with pre-existing patterns, the routines, and the normal we built in our single-parent homes. In those homes, kids often had a lot of influence over everyday decisions, and everyone got used to life going a certain way. That does not shift overnight. It takes time and intention to address those patterns and slowly create something new. If we move too quickly or we lack wisdom about how we move forward with both the reordered relationships and the pre-existing patterns, we can run straight into some significant pain points. Guess what? Trapped teammate, stranded stranger, confounded kids. That's where we end up.
And let's pause for a moment just to normalize something. Even outside of blended family dynamics, all kiddos get confounded about all kinds of things in their lives. You've heard it before. That blasted teacher, how dare they give a pop quiz on a Friday? Or, I'm so confused. Why would the blasted coach make us run drills when we're already exhausted? Or, I can't believe Sally made that comment on my TikTok. That's so blasted annoying. Okay, I know your kids aren't saying blasted,
You like
right?
that word.
Unless maybe you're living in some 70s parallel universe, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Of course, we want to step into our kids' experience so we can empathize with them and support them. But not every moment of a child's discomfort is caused by blended family dynamics. We don't want to overdiagnose or blame everything on what's happening at home.
Right.
All right, honey. You and I have been talking about something that we continue to see as we work with couples related to all this. So hit us with some new insight as we go back to Bill and Kate's family story.
Yeah, great. Let's do that. Now, the term we're going to use here is tenuous triad.
Ooh, that sounds ominous.
It kind of is. When Kate discovers that Bill and his kids bought a water ski without her knowledge or input, she has an emotional reaction and becomes one part of the tenuous triad, the stranded stranger. As Kate confronts Bill, he becomes the second part of the triad, the trapped teammate. He reacts defensively, knowing Kate isn't happy with his decisions, but he's trying to protect the interests of his kids. And guess what? His kids, they become the third part of the triad as the confounded kiddos with their own expectations, wants, and needs.
That's right. And here's the reality. All three parts of that tenuous triad have valid perspectives. No one is necessarily right or wrong, but sadly, they are stuck.
Yeah.
And guess what? That's just the first tenuous triad this family's managing. But before we unpack the second one, listen to what the word tenuous really means. Lacking strength, permanence, or resilience.
Ooh.
Now, we all know what that feels like in a blended family dynamic. And here are some related words that really capture it. Questionable, uncertain, dubious, shaky, ambiguous, right? When a tenuous triad forms, the stakes feel really high. It's a moment where misunderstandings, hurt feelings, and unfair assumptions can take root fast. And if you're not careful about how you navigate it, the fallout can lead to some pretty painful interactions and ongoing relational tension as well. So we have to be mindful and strategic when a tenuous triad shows up because the stakes are actually kind of high.
Yeah. Now let's look at the second tenuous triad that's about to form in this family, and you probably already see it coming. When Bill realizes that Kate and her kids went ahead and reserved the cabana without his knowledge or input, he experiences the emotional reaction of a stranded stranger and becomes part one of this tenuous triad. He confronts Kate, and now she feels the pain of the trapped teammate, defending the beach tradition because it mattered so much to her kids, while knowing it's not what Bill wants. And now Kate's kids become the third part of the triad as the confounded kiddos with their own expectations, wants, and needs.
Yep. And again, all three parts of this second tenuous triad have valid perspectives. No one's necessarily right or wrong, but sadly, they're also stuck. So again, whether big or small, when a decision has to be made, it's easy for all of this to emerge in emotions and relationships. The biological parent can tend to feel like that trapped teammate caught between their kids and their spouse. And it's just as easy for a step-parent to feel like a stranded stranger, disregarded, dismissed, or left out of the loop.
Then the children, as confounded kiddos, often with strong preferences and big opinions, can quickly feel emotionally unsettled when it looks like things aren't going their way.
Yeah, and when you put all of that together, that's what creates the tenuous triad, or multiple triads, a dynamic that can quickly lead to resentment, ambiguity, and frayed relationships, which is the exact opposite of what Bill and Kate were hoping for when they started dreaming about this fun-filled bonding spring break experience together as a family.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So when we get stuck here, the question emerges, well, how in the heck do we get out of it? Well, we've got some good news and bad news for you. Most couples don't just get out of this dynamic. It tends to be alive and well in the early years, just like Bill and Kate are experiencing. And it can linger long into the future. And that's the bad news. But the good news is you can minimize the impact all of this has on each individual and your family relationships too. And the first step to minimizing it is first recognizing that you're in it, which hopefully we've illuminated for you already today. Yeah. The second is being aware of the traps that we tend to fall into when all of this stuff rears its ugly head. Mm-hmm. So maybe you've recognized, oh my goodness, we've got a tenuous triad going on. Or maybe you realize, dang, we've got like 3 tenuous triads going on right now. Let's just acknowledge that and own it. And now let's think about these traps that we tend to fall into. And as you listen, maybe think about which one am I struggling with most?
Yeah. The first trap is impatience. Bill's desire to create new traditions as a family isn't necessarily bad, but his urgency, without fully considering the importance of honoring Kate's long-standing tradition with her kids, well, it reveals a lack of patience. This also includes not getting caught up in our kids' excitement or impatience, like both Bill and Kate fell into, and instead learn to put on the brakes until you and your partner have made a united decision. One best practice in the early years of blending is to lean into what the kids are already used to as much as possible. That stability helps them ease into the new family structure and gives them a stronger sense of security. And yes, blended families do need to develop new traditions over time. But we've got to move at a pace that the kids can handle.
That's right. Now, fear and guilt can also keep couples stuck. Both Bill and Kate felt those emotions as the stories in their heads were forming. And when we start projecting worst-case outcomes, we can get swallowed up by the fear about how the kids will react if they don't get their way, and guilt if they experience disappointment and you believe you've let them down. But fear and guilt are the enemies of growth. They don't move you forward. They paralyze you. And here's the truth. Life is full of disappointment. It's unavoidable. Sometimes your child won't make the team. They won't get invited to the party. they don't pass the test, right? And as parents, we have to be willing to help our kids learn how to manage disappointment because it's part of life. And honestly, it's an even bigger part of life in a blended family. We experience a lot of disappointment in a blended family. But when biological parents are consumed by fear or guilt, they often get stuck. And they end up making decisions based on those emotions instead of making decisions that are best for everyone involved. It's unrealistic to expect that nothing will change for your kids once you remarry. As you merge your families and move forward together, things will need to change, ideally at an appropriate, healthy pace. That's not a failure. It's just inevitable.
At some point, Kate will need to help her kids accept that their spring break tradition is going to change because change is also part of life.
That's right.
Something else that can keep couples stuck in a trap is a lack of understanding and empathy. We often see couples fall into what we call perspective pushing, where each person locks in on what they want and they lose the ability to truly see things from their partner's point of view. At that point, the competition is on. Who's going to win? Who's going to lose? Each person pleads their case, pushes their perspective, and expects the other to agree. Almost like, if I explain it well enough, you'll finally see what I want is what's best, and you'll just magically change your mind.
That doesn't work for you?
Listen, if you can't really hear and understand your partner's unique perspective, and if you don't have empathy for their concerns and emotions, you're going to stay stuck in unproductive cycles of unhealthy communication and ongoing perspective pushing. And when that's the pattern, the two of you will struggle to make decisions as a united team. And don't forget, it's important to develop understanding and empathy for your stepchildren as well.
That's right. And speaking of unity, when a couple lacks unity, it keeps them stuck. And it often divides the family into two biological camps. You can hear it in statements like, fine then, you do your thing with your kids and I'll do mine with mine. And it's usually said with a little intensity,
Yes.
right? Now, to be clear, it's not wrong for biological units to spend quality time together. That can actually be really healthy. But when the decision to split up for spring break or some of these other things is made out of frustration, anger, or resignation, the couple isn't operating as a united team anymore, and then they're headed for trouble. Now, on the other hand, if Bill and Kate communicate really well and they make a shared intentional decision to maybe take separate trips or partial separate trips with their own kids, decide that and they're on the same page, that's a very different thing. That's actually a unified decision.
Yeah. Remember what we covered earlier. When we move forward to change those pre-existing patterns too quickly, we can end up hitting those significant pain points: the trapped teammate, the stranded stranger, and the confounded kiddos. And finally, something that doesn't just keep a couple stuck, but can keep the whole family stuck is a parent-child allegiance. When this happens, a biological parent is unwilling to move towards reordering those reordered relationships we mentioned earlier. Instead, they keep their kids as the top priority always. The kids continue to carry a lot of decision-making influence in the home, and the parent caters to their child, even when it means breaking agreements with their spouse.
Yeah.
Over time, the bio parent's words and actions reinforce a message that's devastating to a marriage. Your preferences and opinions come second to my kids. And that leaves the spouse feeling insignificant, unheard, and alone.
Like a stranded stranger.
Yep, all the time,
Yep.
which almost always leads to ongoing hurt, anger, and resentment.
That's right. Expert Ron Deal says it this way: it's the biological parent who ultimately has the responsibility to elevate the status of the step parent and the marriage in the family. If they don't, it probably won't happen. See, bio parents must be willing to gradually change those pre-established patterns that we were talking about. And Ron also adds that the step parent with the wrong attitude can make this process even more difficult.
Yeah, especially if they're impatient.
Yeah, I may or may have not.
Contributed.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I may have or may have not contributed to that exact dynamic. Yeah. Okay, in other words, you both play a part in healing a parent-child allegiance. It's not just one partner or the other. And that's a significant thought because this is often where couples get stuck blaming and pointing fingers.
Yeah. You know, it's natural for a biological parent to lean toward what their kids want. Kate wants her kids to experience the stability of continuing the spring break tradition.
Sure. And Bill wants his kids to experience the thrill of water skiing and boating. That was something that he really loved as a kid. And there's nothing wrong with wanting good things for your kids or wanting things to go their way. But when a parent-child allegiance becomes permanent, the blended family is going to keep struggling every time a decision has to be made, big or small. Why? Because the couple isn't leading their family from a place of unity.
The truth is, one of the best gifts that you can give your kids is an example of what a united, healthy marriage really looks like and what strong, steady family leadership feels like. That kind of model will serve them for the rest of their lives, especially when they someday build their own marriage and family. But when a parent-child allegiance takes over, it can quietly train kids to adopt a distorted and ultimately unhealthy picture of marriage and family leadership.
That's right. All right, there you have it. The first thing we do is just acknowledge we're in a tenuous triad. Mm-hmm. Then we say, okay, where am I feeling stuck? Like what trap is activated that is keeping me stuck? The impatience, fear and guilt, a lack of understanding and empathy, a lack of unity, or that parent-child allegiance. I want you to take a moment to just think for yourself, what trap do I tend to fall victim to? Or what trap do we tend to fall victim to? Now, if you want to find additional strategies to get unstuck or avoid these traps altogether, we've linked several helpful episodes over in the show notes.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get back to Bill and Kate, who are still stuck in the spring break dilemma. We're going to have to end with a bit of a cliffhanger today. We don't do that very often, but we're doing it today. But if you catch next week's Simple Step, Mike is going to pick it up where we left off and show how their problem could be solved and how you can navigate a tenuous triad when you're facing your own decision-making dilemmas. But for now, we're going to make this episode a wrap.
Why are you stealing my line?
I thought it would be fun.
Until next time, everyone.